say your name, your location, and whichever title that you'd like to be used in the piece.
Okay. So my name is Dr. Samita Nandy. I am a celebrity studies scholar that turned into an actor, and now I give a voice to ethical filmmakers and actors at the CMCS Wall of Fame Film Festival, which is sponsored by the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies, and I'm the director there.
So based on what you were saying before, can you tell me a little bit more about how, the mythology of a celebrity like Marilyn Monroe kind of constructs itself, or how that comes to be?
I would say that the myth around Marilyn Monroe, like many other stars, revolves around an irony. In general, it has to do with the paradox of the absence and presence before and after, on stage, off stage. And what most biographers and film historians, tabloid journalists in the past captured was this aspect of her becoming a victim of her own fame. And that's the dominant myth, apart from the myth that she's a sex goddess. So the fact that she is a victim of her own fame needs to be questioned. We need to rethink that myth, especially with the help of the archival research that we have right now. And we also need to understand that fame is a set of practices by tabloid media, by the government, by businesses, and fandom. And when I say fandom, it does not exclude her friends and her family, her personal relations. And that's where Marilyn Monroe, according to me, had always a choice. Given that she had such a strong creative agency as an actress, she also had the choice to have certain preferences, certain boundaries in her close circle.
So I want to talk about Marilyn Monroe as a feminist icon, as you said. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because she was obviously working in a very exploitative system.
She made herself visible, of course, through her acting skills. She was a good actress, and that's something that we cannot forget. Visibility is key, representation matters, and for her to stand out and also have the creative legacy that she wanted to have is very important. Of course, we do see the tragedy at the end, and there was a lot of missing context in the publication of her reports, and that's something we need to revisit now. But she was a very strong woman. She was a feminist in the post-World War era. And she is an example for many stars. And of course, the challenges that she faced, she's not the only person to face those, like Britney Spears. She had her challenges within her own family. And it's a matter of like how to survive. And of course, she survived as long as she did. She was part of a larger cultural mythology. Of course, she left a cultural legacy, and she was a feminist icon, but that was in a patriarchal setting. And she is widely known as a sex goddess. That's the myth. She's part of this mythology that constructs her, represents her, and distributes her as a sex goddess, but at the same time, she is also a feminist icon having creative agency, and that's what I got out of the new film. I did watch the documentary on Netflix, and I really appreciated the archival research that was done based on the recordings that she had on cassettes. And that's really important for all researchers, all journalists, and the wider public to know, because what she stresses on is having the truth heard through her stories. Many authors write novels like autofictions, and they recontextualize certain aspects of themselves because those contexts are lost in the process of filmmaking or reporting those films. So in order to restore those contexts and restore some biographical details, sometimes it's important to visualize a larger than life persona, I would say. And that's where characters come into play, and they give a life to certain voices that were probably missing in the past. So we get a whole picture, not a complete picture, but a fuller picture of that persona. And we always read the star in relation to what reports come out, what films we have watched. So I would say that having this extra character is not something to exclude. I think it needs to be considered. What constructs fame, especially as represented in tabloid press. It's the paradox of the extraordinary and ordinary. So she has this on-screen image where, you know, she has this beautiful blonde hair and this creamy skin, and her image is read in relation to the tabloid reports that come out, and that is just to publicize the films. So they would talk about who she's married to and which honeymoon she has gone to, and then the failure of all that through violence and, you know, the tragedy that she had at the end. And people are always left with questions of authenticity. Who is this person? Because we have this extraordinary image, and then we have this ordinariness that is shared by so many other female victims. So we always have this paradox between the extraordinary and ordinary, and at the very base level, you know, where she's absent, where she's present. And this question of authenticity, who she really is, and she really wanted to speak the truth in the cassettes that I listened to, in the documentary, that is always unresolved, you know. So this creates this desire for the star. There's always this desire to know who she is in reality, and her goal was really to bring out truth. And if it is not, well, then through different film stories, through different characters, and that's the best that she could do. But I think what fans can do, and the audience at large, is really try to understand her as a woman, even her weaknesses as well, or her challenges, and not just consume her as this idol, you know, just consume and put away, and, you know, have some responsibility there too to empower women. She didn't have enough love relations in her family. That's not an isolated case. This happens a lot, and it's just very tragic that this happens to many women. But there's room for education right now. I would be very excited to see how our next generation of female role models learn from these examples. And very alluring, you know, it was very captivating. So while continuing that, also think of ways in terms one can have more agency, one can have more boundaries. She had a studio. She started to have her own production. It's not necessarily like a studio system, but she started her own production company. She was going to more acting classes. So if anybody today wants to continue her legacy, I think these are the things that they need to pay attention to. Go to acting classes, read stories, write stories, compelling stories, and express themselves in the way Marilyn Monroe also did.